you will be expected to do in these next 2 months before we meet again. And then finally, we'll talk about submitting for a national peer review and just staying after for any other questions that you might have today. So that is our work ahead for the day. And like I mentioned when we first came on, we're going to start off with some breakouts. So Barry is going to partner everybody up kind of randomly. And you have 2 questions that you're going to talk about with your partner. The first one is, what new ideas have I learned in quality task? And the second is, how can I integrate this into daily practice? So what new ideas, how can I integrate them into daily practice? So I'll go ahead and type those into chat as Barry gets your partnerships ready. And there's your second one. So you can go ahead and start to think about those before you pair up with your partner.
And I'm sending your breakout rooms now, so you'll be able to click in.
Yep, and you have about 5 minutes to chat about those 2 questions. Stacy, did you get?
Okay. Alrighty. That's me on the phone, by the way.
Okay. So it's 4:05, so let's give them to like 4:09 or 4:10.
Perfect.
Awesome. Did Melissa write back to you?
She did, so I'm going to schedule her. I'll take her Thursday morning. So it's not a big deal. I mean, it's not ideal, but I figured it's just easier to get her scheduled than trying to coordinate with a couple of the other fill-in facilitators. So
are you
we're
sure
good. She's our last one.
If you're busy, I
can
try to schedule her with Jennifer.
No, it's okay. It's not a big deal. Plus, I had a one-on-one with her last week, just getting her all set because she was sort of behind. So since I'm already familiar with what she's doing, I think it shouldn't be actually too bad, hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah. And trying to think. So yeah, everyone's scheduled a 1-to-1. I assume everyone's been making theirs with yours. So so far, so good.
Yeah, I have Tracy today, and it's just like everything, like content, product, standards.
I know. I was talking to Suzanne because she was like, well, yeah, I just, I make sure that their tasks are good to go. Like, we don't leave a 1-to-1 workshopping unless they're good to go. And I'm like, well, that works until they have problematic text, right? Like, if their text doesn't work. And I feel like we have a couple people who we've been saying this to for weeks and just haven't gotten it.
Patrick.
So
does Patrick have his text yet?
I don't know.
Well, Tracy has her text, and I could watch it on YouTube, so I like know what it's about, and I think the text is fine. I mean, it's just like an informational text about storms, so fine.
Interesting.
I'm excited to get a nice 2-month break.
I know. I'm so glad. The last one. This is exhausting.
Do some stuff on Fridays.
I know. Yeah, that 4 o'clock meeting on Fridays, I understand why it has to be that time, but I'm just like, this is the worst. Like, my son is not like, he's like, I want to play with you. Your son clearly is the same way. He's like, why are you home and not with me? It's Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
I'm just going to make sure our attendance tracker is good to go.
I'll do it while you're leading your whole big half-hour session.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I got most of them. I think there's a couple of people who might have just joined that I didn't get in there, but.
No worries.
Good.
When they go into breakouts, can they see our chat?
You can broadcast a chat to everyone. I think, well, let's see. Maybe I have to do it. I don't think you have the screen. So.
Do you want to broadcast it in case they forgot?
Yeah.
All right. So welcome back, everyone. We hope you had fruitful conversations. Would anyone like to share about what new ideas have you learned in quality tasks?
I just talked about how I've learned a lot about, just being very intentional about selecting the focus standards and just how important the task is. I think I was telling my partner, I focus a lot on the instruction and how I want my kids to learn. But if you don't start with that good, to go task where, it's content driven and you have standards that work well together, no matter how hard you might try to teach them or what your instruction is, they may not, achieve the expectations you had or the overall goal that you intended for your task. So just learning about how important that task is has been really beneficial for me.
Don't you wish you knew that your first year of teaching?
Yes, so much.
Avoided a lot of mishaps.
Yeah.
Like those kids that say they hate writing, but it's really your task that makes them hate writing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because they don't really understand what it is you're asking them to do, maybe. And because you know where you want them to get to by the end of the unit or task or whatever, but it has to be clear to them too.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? And how about our second question? How can you integrate this into your daily practice?
I said that the way that we have to write, or that we've been writing the task, we have moved from I can statements. We do those no longer. We do success criteria of the I can do, I'll know I have it when, all that stuff. And I have found that when I'm writing my lesson plans, I'm paying closer attention to like the things I'm asking them to do, and the way that these tasks are written kind of fall perfect. They're right here on my board. I keep pointing to them.
Oh.
But I have today we will, so we can, I'll know I have it when I can do this. So those tasks that we write kind of fall, like fill in those blanks, because it says the way you have to write them says exactly what they're supposed to do or supposed to be able to do as well. So it's beneficial in just my daily lesson planning too.
Do you have the language of the standards in your daily plan up there?
Yeah, we're working on, like today they were annotating things. So today we will read an annotated article so that we can find the main idea and write an objective summary. We'll know we have it when we can write a summary in our own words. So just pretty basic kid language that takes the I can statements and makes it more of what they are supposed to be able to do at the end of it. But I like how the tasks that we're writing kind of fit into that of this is what we're doing, this is what you should be able to do.
Yeah, because objective summary, what is that? Standard 2, right? That's directly the language from that you have in your daily lesson. Very nice. I know for me, I shifted from having 10 standards every day to just one that I like to use for, a few days at a time.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for sharing your reflections on the course. And Barry's going to help us put on our leader hats.
So I'm going to share my screen in a minute, but before I do, I would love to hear, and we heard a little bit, I think, from Scott last week, some people who've already done or shared that analyzed standards work with, maybe teachers at your grade level or in your PLCs. Has anyone had a chance to do some of that analyzed standards work yet at your school or with a group of teachers? Cindy's nodding. Cindy, can you tell me a little bit about that experience?
Well, Scott and I got a lot out of it. We have a group, not always the same group comes, but they're in our cohort. And when we coded the tasks according to specific focus standards, I think that some of the teachers that did come, there were a couple that came consistently, and one was a math teacher and another was a science teacher, and they could see what we were seeing in class, how easy it is to word your tasks so that the kids understand specifically what they're doing. And I don't know so much as the kids, but we have to see specifically what we're teaching, because I don't know about anybody else, you probably don't get off topic a lot, but I get off topic a lot. So if I have the specific language of the standards and I continually refer back to why we're doing what we're doing, myself and my students get it. And I think that those teachers that came to our sessions saw that, some of that too, that we're getting to see.
That's great. Anybody else have a chance to share it and lead it?
Crap.
All right, so that's something you're going to want to try and do, certainly between now and January when we start quality skills and instruction, mostly because it's a really good way to enter into this leadership role, especially when we're talking about coding a task, right? That's something that by the time you guys finish, and by the way, we're week 8, so we're finishing pretty much, you should feel pretty confident about being able to do. And we've, Barbara and I have certainly seen it when we talk about, during the workshops, either individually with you or when people brought in their tasks and you could say, oh, I see the standard, or oh, that one's not quite there. Because that's really what transitions you from someone who's learning about what LDC is to someone who is actually leading. And a lot of times when I'm in workshops with people who are starting LDC, there's this like cultish vibe around it, like, oh, she drank the LDC Kool-Aid. Because usually once people have started thinking about assignment design through like the LDC planning lens, it's sort of hard to go back, right? Because it just makes sense. Like, oh, of course I should start with the standards. And of course the language should be in there because that's how our students will find success. But for other people, sort of the way it probably felt for you guys during those first couple in-person sessions when we all came out to Kentucky, where you were just like, whoa, core tools, and whoa, I'm not really sure why my administrator is making me come in during the summer. There can be that sort of feeling of uncertainty that you had and feeling like, oh gosh, yet another initiative, yet another thing that I have to add to my plate. That's a lot of times what teachers can experience. And so Analyze Standards and the work you're going to be doing moving forward with these groups of teachers, whoever they may be, is a great way to kind of bridge that gap and ease people in to see this isn't an initiative. This isn't a brand new way of having to do all of your work. It's just, in the long run, a more efficient way to do the work you're already trying to do anyway. So with that in mind, I'm going to share my screen here. And I will also post in the chat a link to this slide deck in case you want it.
It's posted. You're good.
Oh, great. Thanks, Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first things that we can talk about really quickly is, and this is really the guidepost for LDC when we talk about working with teachers or coaches or any leaders, is that the best way to do any kind of professional development is to have it be work embedded, right? It shouldn't be more work on top of the work you're already doing. It should be sort of a just-in-time way of thinking about your practice. So since you guys are going through coach certification, you aren't necessarily teaching the modules that you designed. But when you start working with teachers, they will be. And so it's about meeting them exactly where they are, and as they implement those modules, being there to give them feedback and to say, okay, well, what's your student work showing? What are these mini tasks showing? So that we can make those adjustments and make those improvements. So, coach certification, I can make this bigger too for you guys. All right, so you might remember this from day one of our face-to-face in Kentucky, but this is the badge ladder, basically. And when you're becoming a certified LDC coach, what you are doing is acquiring these badges. So the first thing that you're doing right now is you're becoming a task author. So you guys have written those tasks, you're going to submit them to national peer review, and when you get that good to go or that exemplary badge, you will have that authorship badge. And that's the first step, and that's eventually what you're going to be moving people in your school or in your district to accomplishing as well. Next year in January, we're going to start with the ladder author. So you've got your task. Okay, what is a skill and instruction that goes with it? And then one of the things that you will be working on in between, you could even start now if you wanted to, is becoming a certified task reviewer. And that's where you look at some tasks and you review them and you get calibrated to see, okay, are you finding what is working in the task and what needs some improvement in the task? And you're moving along this ladder so that you are eventually becoming this expert LDC coach, which says, not only can I do the work, and this is what's really important, it's not just that I can do it, it's that I can empower teachers to be able to do it independently and with confidence. Because ultimately what this Circle grant is, which is what you are all a part of, is about spreading good assignment design, good planning from you to a PLC at your school, to eventually your whole school, to eventually your whole district. Because the idea is that if everyone is giving students standards-driven assignments with strong skills and instruction, then all of our students, regardless of what teacher they have, what building they're in, what school district they're in, are going to be successful. So this is where you are part of LDC's curriculum alignment system. So you might remember that first video in the first course that you might have seen. It might have felt a little salesy about the LDC promise, right? But it is this idea that every child deserves a quality education. And so you are a key part of that system, right? We can't have great teachers if we don't have great coaches who are supporting them and leading them along the way. So, in addition to all of the experience that you've gotten over the last 8 weeks and the experience that you're going to be getting next spring, you each have access to LDC Learn content that you can use with your teachers, with whatever PLC group, whoever you are going to be guiding along in this process. So the first thing that you have access to is LDC Learn. You all have been in this because you've been doing instructional cycle 1. So that's when we had the Learn tab and the Leader tab. Everything in that Learn tab you will be able to use with your own personal cohorts, whoever they may be. The other thing that we give you, we don't just, send you on your way and say, use the course content. Some of you may have noticed that course content has facilitation tips, right? So you had the main window on the left with all the content, and on the right, you had a sidebar. And that sidebar is specifically for coaches saying, here's some strategies, or here's what you want to call attention to. And then the last thing is data analytics, and I'll show you that in a minute. So let's talk for a second about the LDC Learn courses. You have LDC as a curriculum alignment system. That's basically your intro to LDC. It's the video. What is LDC? LDC Basics, which walks someone through what an LDC module is, what LDC Core Tools is, and then what the LDC courses are. Analyze Standards, which you're all very familiar with at this point, and then Find and Teach. And Find and Teach is a great introductory course. We'll look at it a little bit more closely in a minute. But what Find and Teach does is, instead of the work you all have been doing, which is to design your own module, Find and Teach allows teachers to find an already rated module, so something that's good to go or exemplary, and go out and teach it. It's 5 sessions. It's a little bit adapting if necessary, but it's really just giving them the experience of teaching an LDC module. So that can be a really nice way to onboard teachers. And then, as you guys know, we have these instructional cycles, and that's more if you have teachers that are ready to actually plan, design, write some modules. So I'm going to show you a different document really quickly, because what you might have noticed, what you might remember, is that, remember when you went to instructional cycle 1 and there's 2 different things you can click? There's adapt and there's design. And for those first couple weeks, there were some people who were doing work in Adapt and some people were doing work in design, and you're like, oh gosh, this is frustrating. So there are some significant differences between design and Adapt. Adapt is exactly what it sounds like. Instead of having someone write a module from scratch, they get to find a module similar to Find and Teach, something that has been rated good to go or exemplary. And instead of spending all the time making the design choices that you all had to make, they get to look at it and say, okay, why were these design choices made? It's a way to think about, okay, this task and this instruction is really good. What makes it really good? And they'll make small adaptations, right? Because everyone's classroom is different. But for the most part, it's really just saying, why does this work? And then getting to experience it. You all, of course, are familiar with design. Design is, you can use a starter task, you can use a prototype, or you can start from blank. But we're going to do this because I have a really interesting idea for a lesson plan, and I want to try it. Are there any questions so far? Go back here. That's not what I want to do. Okay, so that's the course content that you'll have access to. And then you also have those facilitation tips and supports that I was talking about. So this is what they look like in the course. So here's the action item, and here's what you can do in that moment. So a lot of times, the way these courses work is you'll actually go through a session in an actual PLC. So if you have 45 minutes to an hour in your PLC with your teachers, you'll walk through that with them. So it's not like what we did over these last 8 weeks where it was homework and you did it on your own. This is going to be you sitting with them, maybe virtually, depending on what your own situation is going to be. Maybe you're all in a classroom. But as they're making these moves, you can ask participants questions, you can call their attention to certain information so that you really feel supported as you're doing this work. And the last thing you have access to is data analytics. So as you know, most of you know, Barbara and I every once in a while would email you and say, hey, it's week 6. I noticed that you've only completed work in week 1 or 2, or hey, you're supposed to link a module and I haven't seen that you've linked a module. This is how we know. You also probably know that it's not like we're totally spying on you, because when people would email me and say, hey, I did session 6, but it's saying it's not complete, I can't go in. I can't go and see your reflection answers. I can't go and see whether you got the exercises right or wrong. I'm not interested in that. This is just a way that you can keep tabs on whether your teachers are able to do the work. And if they're not, hopefully you found the emails from Barbara and I to be supportive and not nagging or anything like that. But it's sort of just, hey, I noticed that it's not happening, because there's different reasons that people don't get work done. Sometimes something happens in their life and they might not have shared that with you, and you need to know so that you can support them. Sometimes they are not being given the time by their principal or their AP, and you need to know that, because if they're not being given the time to do this work, it's not going to happen. And so this is one way to keep track of that. There's lots of different ways that you can look at analytics. We have a guide, so don't feel like you're just going to get all these charts and have no idea what you're doing. But you can track badges, you can track session completion, you can track how many times they've made comments on people's modules. So it's a really just nice way to know what your teachers are doing when they're not in the classroom with you. Any questions on that? Okay, so before we move forward, I want to pose a question. I will do it in the chat. And we'll send you out into breakout groups again. But given everything you just saw, which hopefully wasn't too overwhelming, because again, you will be supported through this process. But think about what the value is of pursuing these badges, and then also of this work for you as a coach. We're going to send you into breakouts again, just 2 or 3 minutes, so not very long. But think about these questions. And if you have major anxieties or fears, feel free to share those. Think of this as a time to just start, now that the reality of coaching is coming to the forefront a little bit, depending on what your own school or district plan is. What are you thinking about? So let me get these breakout rooms, make sure everyone's assigned. All right, I will send out a chat to everyone when we've got about 1 minute left, okay?
Okay, they're all in.
Yay. I hate these sections where it's just like talking through, like,
Yeah.
and it feels like it's actually a lot. It's a lot to present at them at once. Kim and I are having conversations about changing the structure of quality tasks so that it's really it's 8 weeks of just building a task, not thinking about coaching very much at all. And then having 2 in-person days where, okay, now that you know how to create a strong task, how do you translate this into coaching? And then we would move everything from instructional cycle 1, instead of them navigating between the 2 courses, we would just put the relevant content into quality tasks, because I feel like a lot of the challenge, a lot of it's just like the technical of, like Cindy today, like I haven't completed it, what's wrong? And like that anxiety, we can remove it if it's all in one place. And then, I don't know, I feel like the lift for them, just learning how to write these tasks and learning core tools and everything is really high. And whenever we've run out of time, which has been frequently, the first thing that gets cut is the stuff about coaching. So
yeah. I think that's a really good idea, because like it's just such a huge lift, like first doing the work as a teacher and then showing other teachers how to do it. It's too much.
Yeah. Well, and when you think about it, we give them fewer weeks to do it than we do in instructional cycle 1 if we were just teaching someone how to write a task. So I don't know.
Yeah, I was having a convo with Scott about his coaching work, and it just sounds kind of like very like informal and like kind of unorganized, because I think him and Cindy lead like these weekly like coaching sessions with people, but like anyone can just drop in, so it's not like they're getting any kind of like formal tour through the courses. It's more of like, maybe come 1 week and then like I'll see you again in 8 weeks. So
yeah, and I mean this Kentucky project is hard because it's so big and everything is so mixed that like it's really hard to have, even for us, an understanding of like, do they have PLCs? Do they have weekly meetings? Like, I have no idea what a lot of these people are going into, and honestly, they don't know either. I'm hoping at this point they do. When we met face to face, they were like, "Wait, I'm here for coaching? What?" So
yeah,
we'll see.
I don't know. I was like expecting to see it be more of like a whole school kind of thing, rather than what they're actually going through.
Because that's what we're used to, right? I3 works that way. Like Rankin, all of our implementations have always been much more specific. We've never had essentially a statewide contract like this, where we have a mixed PLC of people for, it doesn't matter if you're in different schools, if you're at least in the same district, so you're on the same calendar or like something like that. Send them a message. Okay. How are we doing on time?
I think we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Because the calibration is just like 2 minutes, and then national peer review showing them that is another 2 minutes. So
yeah, and I think we can do T4. All right, I'm gonna bring them back.
All right, welcome back, everyone.
Waiting on 2 more groups. I should pick on them first. They clearly have a lot to say to each other. Oh, Mary Beth and Scott were in a group together. That's funny. Well, welcome back, everyone. Would anyone like to share something that came up during their partner group discussion, whether it's something you're excited about, anxious about, thinking about when it comes to badging and coaching and this experience more generally?
I think what we were worried about at our school or our PLC is that the buy-in, because there's so many programs that get thrown at us, and then a year or two later, they're like, oh, don't do that anymore. Do this. And so a lot of the teachers just look at us and go, oh, I'll do that, but by the time I get to it, it'll be gone anyway.
Yeah, and adding to
Initiative
that,
fatigue is real, yeah.
And adding to that, I talked about in our group that a big problem at our school is that we have a lot of teachers that tend to think that reading and writing only falls on my shoulders. And it's like, well, I teach social studies, I teach art, I don't have to do reading and writing. Like, okay, well, so something like LDC is pretty much based around reading and writing. That's the point. So getting the buy-in for that when the mentality is, it's not my job to begin with, I teach this subject. We run into that a lot, like a lot. You know, and I have a pretty poor population. And when they come to me as 8th graders, like 65% of the class I have right now, they are nowhere near 8th grade reading level. Nowhere near it. So, you know, all of that falling on me makes something like this very difficult to give to other subject areas, because sadly a lot of them are just not open to things that are not their subject. You know, when we can have a PLC and someone can outright say, well, it's not my job to teach reading, it's not my job to teach writing, and then it's like, oh thanks. So something like LDC I figure is going to be a little bit difficult, because when that's the mentality, and it's not all of them, it's just a lot of them. So
I hear your concerns and I appreciate you sharing them, and they are actually a great transition, because I never want you to feel like this is all on you, right? That it's your job to create buy-in, that it's your job to convince people, because part of a successful LDC implementation is about the team that you create. So I'm going to share my screen again. We have something at LDC called P4. And these are the conditions for success. And if you as a coach, having gone through this experience, and I hope this is the case for all of you, feel like, you know, this is worthwhile. This is worthwhile for my fellow teachers. This is worthwhile for my students. I can see how this will make a difference. Then this is what you are aiming for when you start thinking about, how am I going to bring LDC to my school? Because one, I want you to think about it in terms of, I'm not bringing LDC. I'm not bringing you a new initiative. I am bringing a planning process that will get us better results from our students. And I'm bringing a way of thinking about student success that will bring better results for our students, right? Because LDC is not a curriculum. It's not, okay, we just bought this box and now all of you get this box and this is what you're going to teach from for the next couple of years, right? LDC, it can work. It's whatever you want. I mean, you've got VOS kits in science, go for it. Like whatever it is, it can work with that, because it's just, you're teaching reading and writing, and it does happen in every discipline, like you guys said. Well, let's be more efficient and effective at it. So the very first thing that you want to think about is your team. And this isn't just you. It is so important that you are working with, whether it's a principal or an AP, someone who will take the time to understand a little bit about LDC. You know, we've got some APs, some principals going through coach certification right now, which is awesome, but they don't always. So sometimes your job as a coach is to sit down and say, okay, there's value in this, but these are the conditions that we need to set for this to work here. So the first thing is your team. When you can, and I say when because every school is different, you might already know the teachers that have to be in your PLC, but when you can choose your team, you want to look for those teachers that aren't going to fight you every step of the way. You know, a lot of times as coaches, we think, oh, this is really awesome. This is really going to work. Let me take the teachers who are really struggling because this is going to elevate their teaching, right? A lot of times with LDC, it works better if you actually take the teachers who are being really effective so far. Because if you have a teacher who's at 98%, and then LDC helps them get to 100%, and you have other teachers who are like, I don't want to do this, I'm too busy, I'm too overwhelmed, and they start seeing the success that's happening in these LDC classrooms, that can give you the motivation 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line to get those teachers. So try and pull in the people who are interested, who are excited, who are dynamic, if you can. You want to make sure that you're in touch with your principal, that they are supportive, that they know what your goals of the project are, and that they know how to support you, and that they're willing to spend some time going into a classroom that's implementing a module and see what's going on. And so one of your jobs as the coach or as a teacher leader is to make sure that you're really facilitating those conversations from the very beginning so that everyone is working together. When possible, you can be working on collaborative assignments. Some people did that in here. It works really well, right? Why do more work than you have to? So if you know that everyone in your grade level is trying to teach the same standard or is trying to teach the same kind of product, design an assignment, design a module together, right? Use each other, use your strengths, use your weaknesses, and have it be a collaborative process. It doesn't need, this kind of planning doesn't have to happen in this like siloed exercise. And then of course, remember that you've got us, right? You've got LDC, you've got the facilitation tips, all of that, so you're not working alone. So team, number one. The second thing that is really important, and I think everyone on this call will agree, is time, right? And this is where partnering with a principal or an AP is really, really important. You need your site lead to make sure that they're protecting time for your team. So ideally, that is a weekly common planning time, 60 to 90 minutes every week. That is LDC time. That is not, some weeks it's LDC time and some weeks we're gonna have a staff meeting. That is your time. And this is where you are your advocate for yourself and for your teachers, that if we want this to be successful, this is how it needs to work. Okay. I see a lot of like big eyes right now when I say these things. Reactions, thoughts? I'm gonna stop sharing for a second.
I was thinking like within the English PLC, but that's time, they have to spend time doing other things during that time. So I don't know what time we would give them. I have to think about it. I don't know.
That's what I was thinking, was we're given things to do during PLCs already. I don't know where we would find these minutes at to be able to get that worked in.
So I will say two things. One, I am discussing ideal conditions, and I understand that not every school can make those conditions happen. What I will say is that when we have strong LDC teams, what that means is site leads and coaches who work together and sometimes get creative. And honestly, what we see when people say, oh, we can't do this, this is too hard, frequently is, well, we say we can't do it, but what happens if we look at our schedule? What's our daily schedule look like? And suddenly you look at your daily schedule and you're like, you know, if we shifted math by 30 minutes, or if we changed the way that fifth grade departmentalizes itself, sometimes that alone can build your time. The other thing that we see frequently is principals who say, I'm gonna give this a shot. I wanna see how this goes. So we have 60 minutes of shelter time every week. Sometimes it's disciplinary PLCs, sometimes it's all school staff meetings. For my LDC cohort, they are doing LDC every week. So we have a principal in New York whose entire, this is a middle school and high school, whose entire English department is doing LDC, and they do LDC for every single writing assignment. They do an LDC module. But what she said is, we have this 60 minutes every week. I don't care what we are doing school-wide in staff meetings, they get their time because I'm going to invest in this because I believe in it and I want to see what's possible. And they're getting crazy results. I'm not saying that can always happen, but the truth is that is what you should be advocating for. And from there, you do the best that you can. All right. Any other thoughts or questions?
Okay.
I do agree with Mary
have a
Beth that
question.
principal buy-in, it's so important. Yep, go ahead, Cindy.
Okay. We have myself, Scott, and Patrick taking this course right now, plus our literacy specialist for the district who's in the Friday class. She already comes to us 1 or 2 days a week to work in guided planning teams. I can see for my benefit for 9th grade, I can do that in my guided planning, but that's just 2 of us. In order to, like Scott was saying, in order to take this outside of just my 9th grade English and my partner, we would have to do it after school because we don't have common planning, which would be fine, but there again, unless the principal makes it mandatory, I don't know how many people we're going to be able to pull into this regularly, unless we did it like a faculty meeting. Every Wednesday was, you know, we used to have faculty meetings, you know, every Wednesday, and now we only have them every now and then. So maybe we could do it once a month, but is that enough time?
I mean, to do this, you really need to meet weekly. Now, your principals should have already gotten some version of this information from whoever the implementation manager is for your district. Okay, so this shouldn't be coming out of a vacuum. And again, I want to emphasize that you can't always make it work. But if you want it to be as effective and as successful as possible, you have to be aware of these conditions. And you guys know, you met for 60 minutes once a week for 8 weeks. Imagine, to Cindy's point, if that was only once a month, it wouldn't work. And it'd be way too much time in between. There's, you know, and you're talking about teachers who are supposed to actually teach this. So that's one, you're not alone. Your implementation manager has talked to them. LDC has materials for them that help them. The other thing I'm going to say is remember that this is a growing process. So Cindy, if the only way that you can make it work under your ideal conditions is with 3 teachers in your grade level, and you and your principal are comfortable with that decision, do it. Don't say we're going to work in less than ideal conditions so that we can pull in 10 teachers. Does that make sense? Okay, we are running a little bit low on time.
I feel like if we could get, okay, never mind, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sharing my screen so you can talk.
I was just going to say, if we could pull in a science, a social studies, and an English teacher and a math teacher, 4 teachers during the 6th period that I have for guided planning, we could do this because we could do it weekly, once a week. And I think that would work. And I don't know, Scott, I'm saying this kind of so that you can hear what I'm saying too, because we are going to have to present this to the principal.
I always suggest to coaches, you know, go into the principal and say, under ideal conditions, this is what we want to happen, and this is why it's valuable, and this is what we're going to see if we can do this. So what can we work out? And it is okay. And look, I don't know what your individual school plans are and district plans are in terms of this implementation, but it is okay. You know, I think I saw Stacy say our schedule's already been worked out for the year. We can't change it, to say, okay, we can't make this happen this year, right? So you're going to do coach certification. Maybe we can do analyzed standards at some PLCs or at a faculty meeting. But in terms of doing instructional cycle 1, we can't do that until August of 2019. That's okay too, depending on what your plans are. Okay. 2 other conditions I just want to draw your attention to, and these will be very obvious to all of you after your experience, is one, the tech, not just access to core tools, but you know, the modules, the online courses, all of that. You want to make sure that you've got your licenses. And then text, right, is you need to make sure that your teachers have access to whatever text they want to use, because as you all know, sometimes finding the right text is the hardest thing. And that's where principals can be really helpful in supporting people by giving access to those resources. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And I love the chat, you guys. You guys are so cute. I'm going to let Barbara take over for these last few minutes.
All right, everyone, this will only take about 5 minutes. I just want to show you your next steps for these next 2.5 months that we're not together. So right now I am in the Leader tab, Quality Tasks Week 8. And I just want to draw your attention to our next steps. So you all are scheduled for the one-on-one task workshopping session, so we're good to go with that. In a moment, I'll show you how to complete all of your task sections to make sure it shows that everything is completed in the courses. I'll show you how to do the national peer review submission, and I'll show you what you need to do for task calibration. So task calibration, like Barry said, it helps you become an expert task reviewer. And it's just a fancy way of saying that you review a couple of tasks using the peer review rubric. So let's take a look. When you are in week 8, you can click on task calibration. You will all be doing this. If you want to take a couple notes, you can, or you can rewatch this footage. But this pops up, LDC CAR calibration, which stands for Curriculum Alignment Rubric. And then this goes into an explanation of what it is and what it looks like. But just to quickly show you, you'll click on Open Calibration Instructions. And here on the side, you have ELA modules, social studies modules, so you can choose which tasks you want to look at. And when you choose one, I'm an ELA person, so I go to my ELA tasks. A task pops up, so you'll read through the whole thing. And when you continue down with the instructions, it tells you that you'll go to more options and create review. So you can decide to do a review on your own, or you can choose to do this calibration with a partner, and you can create a review together. So that'll be up to you. And you'll go through the task, and you'll be using that curriculum alignment rubric to decide if this task is, you know, struggling, is it good to go, or is it exemplary? And each time you get elements right in the curriculum alignment rubric, you get points towards being an expert task reviewer. Question? So you'll be reviewing a couple of these modules in these next 2.5 months in order to get that badge. Any questions about this process? I did a quick overview, but all the directions are all connected to this week 8 task calibration part right here. All right, so besides task calibration, you will all be submitting your task for national peer review. So I have Tracy's task up since we're going to do our one-on-one in a moment, but I'll just show you how to submit for peer review. You have your module open, you go to more options, submit for review, peer review event, and you guys are up for the November 2018 partner peer review. So you'll click on that, and then you can submit your module. Okay, so those are due by November. So take all of the feedback you get from the one-on-one sessions, and you have until November to really make it perfect. November 3rd, it closes. Any question about submitting? Okay, the last thing I just wanted to show you was how to make sure all of your action items are completed. Okay, so when you're in the quality task course, you have all of our week sessions in the table of content. This circle here will tell you how many of the action items you've completed within. So what you need to make sure is that it says action items like 3 out of 3 completed, or whatever the case may be. In order to do that within the course, there are, like it's called here, action items. So things you need to click on and submit in order to get credit. One thing we've been noticing is people complete the action items, but sometimes they forget the reflection. So you do need to answer all of the reflection questions in each part in order to receive credit. So again, when you're in the table of contents, if you notice any circle is not at 100%, you can just pop in and complete those action items. All right.
When you get those green checks all the way down, you guys, that's when you'll get your certificate that shows that you did it. And that has to happen for you to work towards coach certification.
Mm-hmm. And everything again is outlined for you in the week 8 next steps. So we're on our final minute. We're going to end with our final chat. And what I'd like you to do is a quick whip. What's one word or idea of something that resonates with you from these last 8 weeks or from today's session? After you add that in, you are free to go. You have 2.5 months off. Enjoy it.
And I'll be here if anyone has questions, concerns, is totally panicking about that T4 document. So I'll stay on and we can chat.
I have a question about the in the quality test week 8, number 5 says explore or revisit, find and teach. I clicked on that, and there's like 5 items underneath that. Do we need to complete all of those?
No, that's a possible course that you could do with a PLC. That's what I was talking about in that slide deck. So just explore it to see what it would mean.
But we do need to complete the task calibration list, right?
You don't need to do that between now and like submitting your task, but that is something you want to do ideally before we start skills and instruction in January.
So get it done before January. Got it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much for your words, guys. These are really exciting. We will see you in January if we don't see you in a one-on-one workshop. But it's really been awesome. So thank you for your participation. And again, I'll be here if anyone has questions or concerns. Otherwise, enjoy the time off.